You're listening to Design to Lead, a podcast where you get to hear the experiences, both the successes and the failures, of two pastors who want to continue to grow in church leadership. Through this journey, we want to share what we're learning along the way. So if you're involved or interested in ministry, this podcast is for you. This is Design to Lead.
Welcome to another episode of the Design to Lead podcast. I'm Reid Terry, pastor at Lone Oak Baptist Church in Lone Oak, Arkansas.
I'm Casey Johnson, pastor at Bonita Road Baptist Church in Bastrop, Louisiana.
And it's good to have you back here in Lone Oak again. We're filming actually our second one of the day.
That's right.
So we've already knocked out one podcast. This one will come out in April, so it's a couple of months after we record this, but
everybody be looking saying they got the same clothes on.
That's right. That's right. We just finished one, and this one actually, this podcast case is going to be a little different than the first few that we have done together. We really talked about some nuts and bolts, I guess, of church leadership, some things that pastors and church leaders ought to be doing that would help them in leading their churches, leading their ministries toward growth. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to talk about ministry frustrations. I'm talking about frustrations. So this is something that probably everybody has dealt with and everybody is dealing with and going through. It's something that's universal and common. But I thought it would be good for us just to visit a little bit about some frustration. So let me ask you this, and we're going to step out of the ministry for just a second.
All right.
And let me ask you about some personal frustrations, all right? So I know you're a hunter. In fact, You're here today when we're filming this because we have a wild game supper you're going to be speaking at. So we're looking forward to that. You have another podcast, Hunt Real TV.
That's right.
That you do. And so you're a big hunter, and that's something you really enjoy.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. I love it.
You love it. Do you experience frustration though in doing something you love, hunting?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
So talk about that.
Oh my gosh, it can be frustrating in so many different ways. One, it can be frustrating when I don't have time to go do it when I want to go. So that can be very frustrating. Of course, I guess I have to step back into the ministry to say this, but you get so busy, caught up doing all the things you have to do in ministry sometimes that you can't go whenever you want to, or you had something planned to be able to go and then you can't, and so that gets frustrating. But you have to go do what you're called to do by the Lord first. But apart from that, man, it's just frustrating because you hunt and you hunt and you hunt, and you expect to kill every time, and it hardly ever happens. And it's frustrating. You think you know where the deer are coming from, and you know where they're going to, and that's the best way to kill them is to get from where they are to where they're going. And so you do it, and you set up, and you're like, this is it. This is the evening, and nothing. Yeah. And it's frustrating. And you just start questioning everything that you do.
I remember giving you a hard time on one of your videos I watched. You said, hey, watch this video. It's like, I don't know, 15 minutes long.
Yeah. And we didn't kill anything.
And y'all didn't kill anything, man.
Right. Yeah. See, there, it frustrated you.
Yes. Exactly.
But it can be very frustrating, or it could be frustrating as well whenever you do get everything to work right, and then you shoot and you miss, and it's bad enough when you do that on a doe, but it's even worse when it's a big buck and you do that. Or you travel out of town and you go to a place you got leased in another state or something, because right around the house where we are, we don't kill a whole lot of big deer. So you got to go somewhere else to do it. You put all that planning, all that preparation in it, and you get there and it just don't work. And it's frustrating.
A lot of plans.
Yes.
A lot of preparation.
Yes.
A lot of work.
Yeah. A lot of empty-handedness.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Right. Right. And that's the frustration.
You hunt 3 months and, you kill 2-3 deer in 3 months.
Yeah.
Now, that's enough for me to eat for the year, which is the purpose of it. But I love doing it.
Right.
And so it's, like, hey, I'm going to kill Aunt Betty Jane a deer, and then it don't happen.
Yeah.
So, a lot of frustration.
A lot of work.
Yeah. What about you? I mean, I know you're a golfer, so.
I do. I love to golf, and I get frustrated golfing. I mean, I love to golf, and I go to the driving range and hit balls at the driving range, do the best I can there. I bought equipment, you spend a lot of money on equipment and
Stuff ain't
taking
cheap.
care of. Nope, it's not cheap. practicing in the yard. I mean, all of those things that you do, and then you go out to the course, and shots that you hit perfect in the yard, at the driving range, you cannot even, you just can't pull them off. And it's so frustrating because you're better than what you're shooting.
Yeah, what and you never holler for so much in all your life. Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so here it is, something you love to do, and you can't do it as well as you would like to do it, or the results of going to play golf don't meet what I thought I was gonna. I thought I was gonna break 80 in the 70s, and I didn't do it.
Yeah, I'm on today in the yard, and then you get out there and you're not on the course. Yeah,
that's right. I always tell people that I play with, if I could ever find the round when I could drive and putt good at the same time, it would be okay. If you're hitting your driver good, you can't make a putt.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
I've played a little bit of golf, and I felt that frustration as well too. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: frustration. We experience it in things that we love to do.
Right.
And for most pastors, pastoring is a joy.
Yeah.
I know it's a joy for you. It's a joy for me. It's something that we know we're called to, and we love to minister. We love to pastor God's people. We love to lead a church. And yet we still experience frustrations. Now that doesn't mean we're doing something wrong.
Right.
It's normal.
Right.
To experience those frustrations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think, there's so many nuances that go into ministry, so many decisions to be made, and you're dealing with so many people who are volunteers. It's not like we're running a corporation and tell everyone what to do. It's all volunteer based. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be just a terrible decision you made. It can be other people making decisions and things too. So there's just a lot of frustrations that come along with maybe making the wrong decision sometimes, but not making the wrong decision sometimes. It gets frustrating, even though you love it.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's crazy.
I wrote this statement down earlier today. Frustration is when the results you experience don't seem to fit the effort you are exerting.
Yes, that is an excellent definition.
Yeah, frustration is when what you see, the result of whether it's a hunting expedition, or a golf outing, or ministry in the church, the results that you see don't match all the work that you put in.
Yeah.
Right? All the time you spent at the range, all the time you spent filling up the feeders and putting corn out or whatever, you're clearing lanes and all that different stuff, and they don't produce the results.
Right.
And that's that to me, it really explains where so many of us as pastors are right now in the ministry.
Yeah.
Because pastors work hard, but probably not even as hard as they have the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah. And let me say this before you go any further with that. Contrary to the popular belief that we only work on Wednesday and Sunday.
You're right.
So many people really, truly, I think, believe that. And that could be that's the furthest thing from the truth.
Because that's the visible part.
That's the visible part. Yeah, it's like anybody can get up there and speak for 30 minutes, but there's so much that goes into being a pastor. And a guy brought this out to me this week, another pastor, and we were preaching a revival together. He was kind of on the north end of the parish, and I was on the south end of the parish. And he was asking me how many people we have in the church, and I said, on a great Sunday, we'll have 450, 500 now. I said, it just depends. It depends on what Sunday with the conditions that we're in today. And I know you'll talk about that in a minute. But, and so he said, but no, he said, how many do you have on your roll? And I said, well, it's like 800 and something on the roll. He said, well, then that's how many people you have to take care of. He said, because even if they're not coming, when something happens, they're calling you. And so you got all of that work going on that nobody sees, the office hours, the messages, the preparation, the taking care of people. And that's not, I'm not trying
it's a joy.
I'm not trying to pour mouth
right,
you
exactly.
poor preachers, y'all got
it's
it harder than everybody else. No, it's a joy, but it is a lot of work to do what we do, and to do all of that work and then just not see what you're expecting to see can be frustrating.
Right.
Very frustrating.
And you mentioned this as we were talking before we got started about spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. That's one of the parts of the job I think people don't realize. That spiritual warfare for a pastor is constant.
Right.
You know,
Correct.
we're constantly in that battle, and we're preparing those messages, and we're studying those hours. We're preparing and we're fighting that spiritual warfare in our own souls and our own spirits as we're writing those. And then we expect, you know, God did a breakthrough in our lives and spoke to us and brought us from point A to point B. And we expect to get up there and present that and see that happen in our people. And we may not.
And we may not. Yeah.
You know,
Correct.
and not that we rely on the visible results of our preaching, but it's good to see it sometimes.
Yeah, that's
and sometimes
right.
you don't even sense that it even landed on anything but deaf ears.
Yeah, you're thinking I'm the only one that got that message.
Exactly.
So maybe that was just for me. I don't know.
Right.
But you have an expectation of, and we know this, you know, we don't save people. We can't force people to be saved. We understand that's the Lord's work. But even when you give invitations or when you invite people to come to Christ, you have an expectation of God moving on people.
Yes.
And then sometimes when it doesn't happen like you envision it happening in your mind, it just can be frustrating. And the warfare side of that is, of course, we know in spiritual warfare, we know that the enemy loves to attack the mind. You know, that's really the battlefield for the enemy, is to get in our mind. And if he can get in our mind, man, he can really frustrate us, because he can just warp our thinking a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And I know right now we're dealing with a situation at our church. Our music minister just passed away, and so he'd been there for 18 years, and so he had served faithfully, was a great saint, just an awesome man of God, and led us well for all of those years, and he passed away, and so now I know that we've got a transition coming, and so I'm praying very diligently that everybody will stay focused on Jesus, everybody will stay focused on the task at hand. But I'm also well aware of the fact that the enemy can get in our minds. He can get in my mind, and he's already tried, you know, of what are we going to do, or, you know, are the people going to follow what it is that the Lord has for you, because it's different than what. So he'll get in your mind, and next thing you know, you'll be frustrated about the whole thing. And so I think that's one of those causes of frustration that we see in the ministry. Sometimes we have to be careful to guard our mind.
Right.
You know?
That's right. That's a good word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was saying earlier, for pastors today, many pastors are working harder today than they were pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, it really changed things.
Yeah.
And yet the results are even less.
Yes.
You know, we're working harder as pastors in many cases, making decisions, trying to lead our church through waters that nobody seems to have had to navigate before. Right. And then when we come to our church, there's even less people in the building.
Right.
There's less faithfulness of the people that are coming. You know, people are scattered and those sort of things. For me, that's one of those areas that I think many pastors sense a lot of frustration right now.
Yes.
Because the results don't match the work that they're putting in.
Yeah, and I you know, I mentioned a few minutes ago about the revival that me and another guy were doing together. And it was kind of a cluster revival. It was a bunch of different pastors come together, their churches come together. And I heard that sentiment from those pastors. They were like, man, we're just not seeing people come back. We're not seeing people get involved. We're not, we're just not seeing what we used to see after COVID-19 happened and stuff. And they're frustrated because they're still working. Like you said, they're working, if not, they're working harder than they were working because they're beating the bushes. Of course, a lot of them now are having to do media stuff and having to do social media things where they never had to do that before. But they're trying their best to connect with people that are not there. And so it's just a lot of work. And to not see the results, it's just frustrating, man.
It's interesting that you said that. You know, this past week, I had an opportunity to meet with some of our pastors' friends in Honduras that we minister to, and we're going to that conference in April to preach. Well, I met with them online, and they started asking some questions, and we started talking, and they immediately brought up this, hey, people are not coming back to church. We've lost some of our congregation. The ones that are coming back are not as faithful as they were even before this pandemic. And when I shared with them the same things happening here, it was like a relief.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the reasons we want to do this type of a podcast was when people understand you're not in this alone.
Right.
Everybody is going through the same facing these same sort of frustrations.
Yeah.
it really helps you to know
Yeah.
that you're not all by yourself.
No, and whenever I think about that, because you're sitting there thinking it's happening in Honduras too, and they're going, oh, that's happening in America, and you're like, yes. I think about one of them old war shows, where they have those trenches, and like these guys are being attacked, and everybody's in those trenches, and they're all in the trenches. Right. Now he may be over there, and the other guy's over here, but we're all in the trench together.
Right.
And that's the same thing that I think about. They're not by themselves. No guy that is listening to this, no leader is by himself. We're all having to deal with it, and it's tough. It makes it different. I mean, the way that I get frustrated with the way we're having to do things now in some situations. And let me give you an example of this. Like, I'm at the place to where, number one, our church is big enough now to where it's just impossible for me to see everybody the way I used to. I can't. If I do that, then we'll go backwards because, so that's where I have to take the lead, and depending on others, whether it's deacons or Sunday school teachers and stuff like that, to help visit and to help, take care of people. But I still get frustrated because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do as far as visiting is concerned. The elderly are the most vulnerable to the COVID-19, no matter what variant it is. So when they get sick, your immediate response used to be to go see them. Now it's like, well, I don't want to go see them. I do, but I don't, because I'm around 500 people, 400 people, 300 people. I'm afraid I'll give them something and they're already sick. And so now I'm going to make it worse. It's just like you don't really know what to do, and trying to navigate that is tough. It's frustrating. It's frustrating.
It is. Yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking, and there's that warfare thing again. You're trying to protect them or to be safe about protecting them, but you're scared. They're thinking, my pastor ain't doing his job. But you are. You're doing what it's just frustrating, man. This day and age we're living in right now is frustrating.
It's so difficult.
It's
so difficult.
Yeah.
We're trying to think through some different things that maybe other people are facing that are not unique to them, that are causing some frustrations. The pace right now of the pace of ministry, the pace of getting things accomplished in a church can be frustrating, and really it can be on either side. For some that may not have been as prepared for a pandemic, the pace is so fast right now. They're having to do so many things to try to catch up with where they need to be to minister to their people. That can be a frustration for them. Yeah. And then on the other side, there are others that they know there's things that need to be done, and yet the wheels of the church sometimes just turn so slow that you can't get those things accomplished. Right. That's frustrating for pastors.
Yeah.
We've all experienced, I think, that on one side or the other. Criticisms, and you mentioned this just a little bit, criticisms, whether they're real criticisms or imaginary by the pastor.
That's right.
Those are frustrations for us because we think, man, are these small, inconsequential things, or are these things that matter? Are people saying this? Are they not saying this? Are they thinking this? Are they not thinking it? And that's that, you just talked about it, the battle in our mind. It's this spiritual warfare that we are constantly dealing with. Yep. And it's so frustrating. I know I struggle with that personally. Oh yeah. So many days.
Yeah, it's a constant battle on many fronts. I guess for me, when I think about that, I'm such a driven person as far as leadership is concerned and excellence is concerned and stuff like that. We've talked about that in the core values video and stuff. But so to me, like the warfare in my mind is that I battle thinking that I'm not meeting expectations. And so that the devil can play that in my mind, and that becomes frustrating to me because all these thoughts enter in. And so then I have to go full on, armor of God, get in the Word, dive in the Word, and say, are you doing what I have to start evaluating what I'm doing. Is that just mental? Is that warfare? Or am I not doing what I need to do and stuff? So it's just a constant battle. And so many guys are feeling all that right now in a lot of different areas.
So how do you think, let's just talk for a second, how do those frustrations that we all feel, how do they find their way out? I was trying to think through some of this, ways that because a lot of times if we don't really just stop and think, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's going through my mind? Then we may not identify it as a frustration from some place in the ministry.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how frustration might reveal itself in a pastor or a church leader's life. And I wrote down a couple of things, and these are really for me very, very particular.
Yeah.
One of those things, when I become real quick tempered, things that used to not make me angry, I get angry now.
Yeah.
That's a evidence of frustration in my life. What are some others maybe?
Well, I think you go into a protective mode. You know, it like if you start thinking the frustration is in your mind, you're thinking someone is questioning what you're doing, even if they're not. You've convinced yourself and you've allowed that thought to just take root. Yep. Then you get very protective of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so then you feel like you have to explain why you're doing stuff to people.
Right.
And they're going, okay, and you're like, well, I just had to tell you that because, I know what you're thinking. And they're like, I'm not thinking anything like that, but it's you. And that frustration comes out being overprotective about what you do.
The little nuance of that in my life is this lack of confidence.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden I'm questioning, I know that was the right thing to do, but was it now? Was it really the right thing to do? Let me think about it from another. And so you begin to question everything.
Yeah.
And you don't want to take those calculated risks or those ministry steps that need to be taken just because you don't have any confidence.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Some other things I wrote down are just some added stress in your life, sarcasm.
Yeah.
A lot of times the frustration will come out that way, right?
Oh, yeah.
Giving up. I was talking to some pastors not too long ago, and one of them shared with me kind of frustrating about those that had not returned and faithfully come back to church. And he said, look, by now, if they're not coming back, you don't have to worry about them. Well, that's a frustration.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just this throwing in the towel, giving up, and
which is not in your DNA.
It's not who you are.
I don't give up that easy.
Right. It's not who you are. Right. So why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's anxieties and depressions, that are more serious
Sure.
in nature. I think that we're seeing a lot of that in our churches.
And sometimes those things show up at the house. Like in our marriages and different things like that. If we're not careful, our children. So
parenting,
you got to watch for that.
So how do you handle it when you're sensing frustration in your ministry and it's starting to reveal itself in these ways? How do you handle that?
Well, I kind of jotted down a few things to think about with that. One I thought was I had to figure out where that frustration is coming from, and because if I don't know where it's coming from, then I'm not going to really know how to handle it. So I have to kind of ask myself, is that something that the devil is doing in my mind? Is that warfare? Is that an unmet expectation? Is that where it's coming from? Is it a lack of me doing what I'm supposed to do? And I think once I find the root of it, of like where that's coming from, then I can address it. Now, there's two ways you can address it. You either have to address it personally, if it's something that you're going through or you're dealing with on a personal level that has nothing to do with anybody else, then you have to address that personally. However that is, and of course, obviously we know prayer and the Word of God is going to be crucial in that. Or if it's something that you need to address, for example, if you smarted off to somebody or, something, then you got to go address that, and say, hey, look, I'm frustrated. I've got all this going on. I'm sorry. So you can do that personally and privately, but there may be some corporate opportunities that you have to fix that,
Right.
And I would say this, man, when it comes to that, don't be afraid as a pastor and leader to be able to confess that. Guys, I've been struggling with, just as an example, guys, I've been struggling with whether to come see you or not, and I just don't know what to do. And so, I apologize in these areas because I've been lost. This whole thing is new to me, and so I think it's good sometimes to be honest with our churches about that struggle and that frustration. And then the last thing that I thought would be that you definitely need to address whatever the frustration is factually and not emotionally. Because when you address it from an emotional perspective, then you will tend to develop another frustration.
Right.
So just let's take the facts of what's going on. Let's get the warfare out, take the facts, and then address it from that, and not emotionally, because that's when we get ourselves in trouble.
You know, we know the statistics right now. A lot of pastors are leaving the ministry. Right. There's a lot of reshuffling going on. A lot of pastors changing churches, and I think a lot of that has to do with these frustrations. And they don't know how to deal with them. They don't know how to handle those. And so, you know, some of the things that I would say is, you know, take your time off. Make sure that you're getting the rest that you need. Rest is so important. So make sure you get that. Find a way to relax. Embrace some sort of a hobby or something of that nature. But don't ever overlook the importance of having somebody to talk to.
Absolutely.
You know, I know you confess that to the Lord. You speak to the Lord about those, but having other pastors that, now that you know they're going through it, go and talk to them. Sit down with other pastors. You know, we've done that. You and I, we've shared, and I know we each have friends that we talk to on the phone, and our staff members and things of that nature. Therapists, if you need a counselor or a therapist, go find one and sit down and share with them. And those kind of things will help you navigate those areas where you're frustrated before you get to the place where you're ready to burn out and give in altogether.
Yeah, just quit, you know.
Be done.
I think another thing that we have to remember, too, as pastors is we have to stop putting an unfair expectation on ourselves. Yeah. We think that we're supposed to be perfect in everything that we do. I know we're trying to do that, you know, perfectly. We're trying to lead the absolute right every time. And sometimes I think we put an unfair expectation on ourselves, and when we realize that that's not coming to pass, then we get frustrated. So I think one of the things that we can do to help with the frustrations is do all of those things we just mentioned, and certainly have those friends that you need to talk to, because that's critical. But you're not going to get it right all the time, so don't think that you are.
Yeah.
You know, lead the best you can, lead well, do what you're supposed to do, but don't have an unfair expectation on yourself, because that's going to hurt you in the long run.
Right.
Because you're not going to do it all right all the time.
Yeah.
So.
You know, ultimately, just to bring this back to where we began, pastoring's a joy. It's something that you can love to do and know you're called to do, and still experience some huge frustrations in the ministry that can lead to what may be burnout, giving in, anxieties, depressions. Don't let it get there.
Right.
Find help. And so as we end, Casey, I would encourage those that are listening, if they're going through this, reach out to us.
Yeah,
put us
absolutely.
a note in the comments.
Yeah.
Send that to us. We'll be praying for them. If there's any way that we can help, we'd love to do that. If this has been helpful to any of our listeners, make sure to like it, share it, subscribe to it.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel, man.
That's right. Do all those things, because I feel like this kind of content really will help so many more people as the word gets out.
Especially in the day we're living in right now. It's very relevant. Yep.
Man, good doing this again. Good seeing you, Casey. Glad you're here. And can't wait for the next one.
Can't wait till next time.